The SEC has the opportunity to make a decision that could legitimately impact Iowa State's non-conference football schedule, and I do not like it. We're talking about it today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Whether you're watching on YouTube, or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. First thing we're talking about today is the SEC and the decision they could make that would impact Iowa State's non-conference schedule, why I don't love it as it sits right now. And then we're going to talk in the second segment about what that model could look like according to Joel Klatt of the Joel Klatt Show, what I do like, what I don't like, what that whole model looks like for NCAA football as a whole. And then finally, in the third segment today, we're talking about West Virginia and if they could be the ones to rain on Iowa State's parade in the Big 12 championship game, what Rich Rod said. Can't wait to get into all that and more. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, let's dive right on into this whole concept of what the SEC is looking at, what could potentially transpire, and what that means for Iowa State. Now, Joel Klatt was talking about this on the Joel Klatt Show. Credit where it's due. And the first thing that I want to get into here, and I say that because what he's said is important, but the first thing that kind of brought this whole thing up is the Notre Dame Clemson agreement. And we talked about this previously, but I'll just quick synopsis here. Notre Dame and Clemson agreed to play each other every single year for, I believe it was the next 12 years. Notre Dame benefits, Clemson benefits. Obviously, it's tied to the ACC revenue, TV ratings deal thing going on there, and Notre Dame gets to play a high-level opponent. I talked about why I think this could be something that Iowa State should potentially pursue, what that could look like, whatever. But that kind of got Joel Klatt talking about the SEC having a ninth conference game, because those pieces of news were dropped at about the same time. Okay, that's why I mention all of this. It's all kind of a big package deal with a bow on top. So we transition from Notre Dame Clemson, which it is a part of this conversation, to the SEC maybe playing a ninth conference game. ESPN offered the SEC more money to play an extra conference game. Okay, the SEC plays 8 conference games. They would be moving to 9 conference games, a number that the Big 10 and the Big 12 already play. Okay, so Iowa State plays 9 conference games. Iowa plays 9 conference games. Name any Big 12 school, 9 conference games. Name any Big 10 school, 9 conference games. Name any SEC school, you guessed it, 8 conference games. So could the SEC move to 9 conference games? Maybe. Okay, they could. They could take more money to do that. That hasn't really been conversed about. It hasn't been negotiated. Numbers aren't really even on the table from what I'm at least seeing. And so we're going to act under the assumption that the SEC would play a ninth conference game, because that's what all of this that I have in front of me is kind of assuming. But there is a world where they decide to just stick with 8. But if they were to play a ninth conference game, that means now we have 3 conferences that all play 9 conference games. Now, this is important because then you're looking at some level of uniformity between conferences in college football. Okay, what does that mean? Well, now you're looking at when you're looking at teams for the college football playoff, conference records. Those numbers are kind of the same between conferences, non-conference. All of that is all kind of leveled out, which is probably good. Probably good. The SEC probably doesn't want to take on a ninth conference game, because that means that half of their teams are going to have an extra loss and half of their teams, well, it is a good thing they'll have an extra win, but that those teams with the extra loss, you just don't know who that's going to be, right? And so they don't necessarily want more losses in the SEC, right? That's just kind of, I think if the SEC could choose between more wins and more losses, they would choose more wins. but if they could choose between 50% more wins and 50% more losses, they would choose no change. Now, that's just my opinion, but let's say they go to the 9 conference game slate. What does that mean for the Big 12 for Iowa State? If they were to go to a 9 conference game slate, and now there is uniformity between the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC, there is a possibility that a governing figure, some sort of commission or commissioner or whatever it is over NCAA college football, there is a possibility that that kind of entity could start to alter the non-conference slate. And that's what Joel Klatt talks about. And that's where Iowa State and the Big 12 come into play. Now, is this the commission that President Trump set up that Nick Saban is potentially a part of? Maybe. Is it something else entirely? Also on the table, who knows? This isn't about any one thing in particular. It's just about the concept. Okay. And the concept is that there is a possibility, like I said, that this entity could control what goes on in the non-conference for these teams to better give the committee an idea of who should be in the college football playoff. Now, where am I going with all of this? If this committee were to strip Iowa State of playing Iowa, I would be absolutely livid. I don't think that is fair. I've seen some posts in recent, I guess, weeks. It's kind of the offseason's kind of been long by now, saying that the Cyhawk rivalry is, a top 40 rivalry or a top 30 rivalry or whatever. I think that's a load. I really do. I think that the Cyhawk rivalry is top 10. Now, I will say I am, obviously in Ames. I am in Iowa City a lot. A lot of my friends are Cyclones. A lot of my friends from high school are Hawkeyes. And so I am very much in the trenches of this rivalry. And therefore, it is just always turned to 100. Now, if I were maybe in a different, part of the country and a fan of a different team, I might have I might not even know what the Cyhawk is. I completely understand that. That's a part of the game, but I'm not. And I know just how heated the Cyhawk gets and just how important this is to so many Iowans. And so for the possibility to even be on the table that this rivalry would be eliminated, I could not deal with this. I just couldn't do it. I don't know what the number would have to be for Iowa State to be guaranteed to make the playoff or guaranteed to make the championship for me to even consider taking away the Iowa State rivalry game. But it would have to be very high. It wouldn't have to be 20-25%, which I think that's a number that if Iowa State at the beginning of a season was like, hey, you have a 20 to 25% chance that you're going to make the playoff, I would be ecstatic. I would. But if I have to give up playing Iowa, I don't love that because Iowa State is dominating Iowa, at least as of late. So I don't know what that number would be, to be completely candid with you. Is it 100%? Is it 90%? Is it 80%? I don't think it's south of 50. Even that feels weird to say, but I do think that what we've seen recently and what could, continue to happen, I would want to keep playing Iowa, even if we don't make the playoff ever. Like, I just want to beat Iowa. Now, that's just me. That's just how I feel. I know there are going to be Iowa State fans that don't care about the Iowa game, that just want to make the playoff, that just want to make the Big 12 championship game. I get that. I'm not saying that that's not, but I mean, for a 50% chance at making the playoff or you beat Iowa, I would take beating Iowa 8 times out of 10, probably. That's just how I feel. That's how I've been raised. That is how I am very much emphatically positioned. It is go Iowa State, boo Iowa. That's always what it's been. Okay. Now, all of that to say, is that what's going to happen? Probably not. Realistically, I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that the Iowa State-Iowa Cyhawk rivalry is very important to everyone in the state of Iowa, even the schedule makers. And so it's something that we will hopefully continue to see as it's a non-conference game. But if the SEC were to move to this non-conference schedule, and there were to be a governing body that would look over the non-conference in an effort to better align the entire, NCAA football landscape, we just you gotta think about it. What could it look like though? What could it actually look like aside from potentially losing Iowa State, Iowa? We'll talk about that coming up right after this. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You know that I have been keeping track of Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers, especially against the Cavs, looking good. Tyrese is plus odds to score 20 plus points tonight. And I honestly, I'm definitely going to be keeping track of that. New to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I know you make this your first listen every single day, and I couldn't appreciate it any more. Now, let's talk about this 9-game SEC conference schedule and what that means for Iowa State. Obviously, we've talked about there's the potential that the SEC could take more money from ESPN to play an extra conference game, and that would put them on the same playing field as the Big Ten and the Big 12 in the number of conference games played. And then that would give, some sort of governing body or commissioner or whatever, kind of the opportunity. It would open the door for them to at least look at regulating the non-conference portion of the schedule, excuse me. Now, feels like we went through a lot of doors to get to where we're at, but it feels like we're a lot of moves away if you play chess. And some of these dudes do play chess, I am sure, and we've got to be on the lookout for it. That's why we're talking about it today. So, like I said, we're talking about something that Joel Klatt on the Joel Klatt show talked about, and things that he had mentioned I thought were very much worth talking about, as they are at least a possibility, right? So if the SEC takes this 9th conference game and this commissioner, whatever governing body decides to regulate what the non-conference would look like, that's where we got to talk about right now. What specifically, what could we actually be staring at here? Because we've thrown around the idea of Iowa State no longer being a thing, and I've made it very clear how I feel about that. Is that a little bit of a hot take? Maybe. I don't even feel that bad about it. I really don't. It's just how I feel personally. But this schedule, this kind of schedule regulation, we don't know what it would look like, but Joel Klatt had at least an idea. Okay, and so let's talk about Iowa State's schedule for this upcoming year. First, to just get an idea of what we're looking at here. Iowa State will play Kansas State in what I now believe is a conference game, because they'll play Kansas State on the, in Ireland, and then they'll play South Dakota, Iowa, and Arkansas State. There are 3 non-conference games, unless something changed that I'm not aware of. Then they'll have a bye week, and they'll have 3 conference, bye week, 3 conference, bye week, 2 conference. 3, 3, 2, that's 8. Those 3 non-conference. That leaves only Kansas State to be a conference game. And what I read on the Big 12 website was that this is, in fact, a conference game. I know I've said before that it was a non-conference game. That was just the assumption that I was making, because I was incorrect. I apologize. But nonetheless, that's what we're looking at for a schedule for Iowa State this year. South Dakota, Iowa, and Arkansas State. Now, what Joel Klatt was kind of proposing here is that there is a 9-1-1-1 kind of format that could potentially happen as far as formatting the schedule. You got your 9 conference games, and then you've got 3 non-conference games, that would go a certain way. And this is the way that Joel Klatt proposed. One, that is the G5 school, that you obviously helps G5 players get Power 4 level kind of snaps under their belt. It helps with the G5 school, and it also gives kind of these Power 4 schools almost like a warm-up game, sorta, in some ways. Then the other game would be, or the second game, I guess, would be like a rivalry game, right? Some sort of regional game One that wasn't like super regional that he threw out was Colorado, Nebraska, but he threw out a few others, and I feel like Iowa State is right in there. So I talked about what would happen. Could Iowa State go away? Potentially, who knows? But under this, what he's proposing, it also could stick around, right? So I just wanted to make my stance on that situation very clear, but there is the potential that it could stick around if it were to be mandated, even under this kind of model, right? Iowa State could remain intact. The final game, so 9-conference, 1 G5 game, 1 rival game. This last non-conference game would be a scheduled for you game that is kind of dictated by your finish last year. Now, it's kind of similar to how the NFL does their schedule making. It's kind of complicated, but it's basically, obviously, you play your division, and then you play a division in your conference, and you play a conference, or excuse me, a division in the other conference, and that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games, and then there's 6 games left. And so you play, I think it's like every team that ranked the same as you did in your division last year in the other conference, plus one random team from your conference, I think is what those last few games are. It doesn't feel like it adds up. But the point is, there is an element of you play other teams that rank the same as you did in your division. So if the Ravens finish third in their division, they'll play other teams that finish third in their division the next year. If Iowa State finishes, maybe it's at a win record or a win, kind of value of 7 wins, then they'll play a team that finished at 7 wins in the ACC or whatever the case might be. Is it position in the Big 12? They'll play that position across to the ACC. I don't know if it's SEC Big 12, SEC Big 10, Big 12 ACC, if that's the partnerships. I don't know how that whole thing looks. If it were me, I would treat it more similarly to the NFL in they're all the same. They're all equal. But we all know that the Big 12 is not kind of viewed in the same light as the Big 10 and the SEC. And there is going to be a push for the SEC and the Big 10 to have a partnership, and the Big 12 and the ACC to be kind of left by the wayside. And like, well, if you want to do what we're doing, I mean, you guys could be partners. It's like when you go to a group chat or a group project, and you're kind of sitting over on the side. You didn't pay attention when the teacher was like, "Hey, find a partner," and then there's like a few people left, and you're just like, "Well, I guess I got to find a partner now." It's kind of the same deal. Like that could happen as well. I don't know what that exactly would look like. Now, would that model benefit Iowa State? There is an element of you play tougher opponents, and so that is going to help your overall, kind of strength of schedule, your opponent strength. Well, that's kind of the same idea there. But quality losses, all those words that they like to throw around, there is an element of that. But there's also the side of the coin that is Iowa State early in the year. I don't know if traditionally they're the best team, especially very early in the season. And so if Iowa State has to square off with the top SEC team because they had a really good season last year, like this year, if this were to go into effect right now and Iowa State were to have to face an 11-win SEC team, how would they do, in week 3? I don't know. Probably not as great as they would against even Iowa or South Dakota or Arkansas State, any of these non-conference games that they have now. Now, that's not necessarily anything against Iowa or South Dakota or Arkansas State. I'm just saying in general, that's the assumption that I'm going to make. That's what I'm guessing. And so that's the downside, I think, of this situation is that Iowa State early in the season, if you do take on a loss, how does the team respond to that? If you're able to beat that top tier team, or if you're even able to beat a mid-tier SEC team because the team prior didn't do so hot in Ames, and then you play a mid-tier SEC team, if you beat them, maybe that's a huge momentum boost. But under the, kind of quote-unquote assumption or hypothetical that Iowa State would lose that game, that's not a position I would want to be in. Right? That's not where I think I don't think that's beneficial for the team moving forward. So do I love it? No, But do I hate it? Also, no, because it brings some level of regulation to the non-conference. And I think that that would help eliminate some question marks. And I think Iowa State is in a position to benefit from at least eliminating some question marks. I think that that's a fair assessment to make. Now, let's talk about question marks. West Virginia making the Big 12 title game? Very much a question mark there. We're talking about that coming up right after this. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center, and you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. And my favorite feature, managing money with your partner, is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. You're Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're going to talk a little bit about Iowa State, potentially being in this Big 12 title game. But could they be squaring off against West Virginia, or would West Virginia be the team that steals their spot? Very interesting question. Not one that I thought I'd be answering today, I will say, to be completely candid. Now, the reason we're talking about this is Rich Rodriguez came on to the College Game Day podcast and basically said that if the West Virginia Mountaineers were not a contender in the Big 12, it would be a bad season. Okay. Very much that would be a huge jump for the Mountaineers. I personally believe that. And the writer of this article, Dan Morrison, said that, there is a lot of parity in the Big 12. And I went back and looked at it, and he mentioned the last team to win back-to-back titles was Oklahoma between 2015 and 2020, 6 straight years of Big 12 titles for Oklahoma. And prior to that, Baylor would have been 2013, 2014, it looks like, is what I'm reading here. Nonetheless, obviously, it's been a while, and the Big 12 is known for being a league of parity, which is what makes it so great, in my opinion, and why I wonder if Iowa State is the team to come and take home the title this coming year, or is it West Virginia, a team that could come from the depths of wherever, just as Arizona State kind of did last year, a team projected to finish terribly and ends up winning it. West Virginia, obviously, under a complete rebuild now, under Rich Rodriguez. Is this the team? Is this team to really come back and be successful? Obviously, Rich Rodriguez had success with West Virginia back when they were in the Big East in his first stint with the team. But now in the Big 12, could he do the same? And is his mentality better or worse than Matt Campbell's? We're going to talk about that here in a second. Is West Virginia the team to do it? I don't know. I've got their schedule pulled up here, and just kind of glancing at it, I don't know if, is this really? I mean, you've got obviously your first 3. You got Pitt in there. That's going to be a tough one. Kansas, Utah. It says BYU, I believe. You got UCF, TCU, Houston. I mean, that's a game in there. Colorado, Arizona State, Texas Tech. Didn't even mention home or aways in there, but I don't know if that's a relatively tough schedule. I do think Iowa State's is easier than that, based on the way that their schedule is built. They'll play 6 and then 5, and then have a game after that last bye against Texas Tech at home. I don't know if that's the recipe just for success, looking at it, in a very small glance here. And I was right. It is BYU that West Virginia will play on the road on October 4th. But that's just the schedule, and that has nothing to do with Rich Rodriguez coaching style or the team that they brought in. And I'm sure if you ask Mountaineer Paul, he'll say that this team's going to win the Big 12, probably the whole thing. And I would say the same thing about Iowa State this year. I really would. I would cite the linebackers, the tight ends, what I think the wide receivers could do, Rocco, obviously, his advancement, the running backs coming along, the safety group looking to continue the success that we saw last year, the secondary group, I suppose. Like, I would say the same thing. And I think almost every team in the Big 12, their Locked On host would probably say the same thing. But since I'm not the host of Locked On Mountaineers or Locked On West Virginia, I can say I don't think they're the team. I don't. I think Iowa State's the team. And I think that there's a few others that you have to look out for, which maybe I'll sit down and really dial into each team and give you a prediction. Although I do have a few circled. And if you want to see it or at least hear it from me, comment down below or tweet at me at Nick_Marv, and I can get it that your way. But right now, so we don't go down a deep rabbit hole, I don't think West Virginia is that team. I just don't. So let's dive into, is Rich Rod's kind of mentality better or worse than Matt Campbell's? The concept that he would say it's a failed season if the Mountaineers don't compete for the Big 12 title. I think we can all agree on what Matt Campbell would say if he were in a similar situation here. Okay. I think what he would say is he wants to develop young men and still be successful at the same time. Something along those lines. Like, the ultimate goal for Matt Campbell is to turn these young men into full-blown men, right? Like, kind of that boys to men, 18 to 22-year-old, turn them into very well-rounded individuals, not just on the football field, and develop their football skills as much as possible, but also as humans, as adults, to turn them into, kind of full-blown functioning members of society, or whatever you want to call it. I think that's kind of goal number one for Matt Campbell, which is what makes the culture at Iowa State so great, is that it isn't solely about winning, because he's even talked about how important it is to lose. Obviously, he does want to win, and that's kind of like the secondary, that's kind of the byproduct of all of the development, not only of the football side of things, but also of the human side of things, is Iowa State will end up winning games, right? And it's, it's the team, it's the team. And then therefore now you've got multiple guys that are, everybody's eating and the team's just winning, right? Like, that's just what happens. And so now that we've kind of got both of these quote unquote mentalities or ideas on the board, which one's better? You can't probably say which one's better, right? You can't probably pick one and say that is the better mentality to have, because on what scale, on what record, what I'm trying to think of what rubric, on what rubric, what are we grading against here? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. It's impossible to like, if you gave me this rubric, okay, this one's better. If you gave me this rubric, that one's better. Like that, okay, then that's impossible to gauge. But which one would I rather have? Matt Campbell every day of the week. Now, Rich Rodriguez could go on to win the next 15 Big 12 titles. Good. In a row. That'd be amazing. That'd be wild. That'd be one unbelievable run. But even if that were the case, I would still take Matt Campbell and his mentality, just because of what it ends up resulting in, and the kind of the image that leaves for Iowa State to be viewed as. I'm a huge fan of everything Matt Campbell does, says, is, kind of his mentality, the way he runs his program. I think he does it all the right way. So if I could pick between two, I'm going with Matt Campbell. Like, it was never even a competition. And we've heard, him talk about players being recruited, and guys staying because, in the transfer portal, what we're looking at now in this whole new era, and why guys are coming to Iowa State, it's all related to culture. And so I think that that's important. I think that that is something that it seems to be going by the wayside, but Matt Campbell isn't going to let it. He is going to stay kind of on that forefront, and I think he'll stay true to what he is, what he does. If I had to pick, I would go with Matt Campbell. But nothing against Rich Rodriguez. I mean, maybe this works out for him. That high expectation. You got to come in in year one as that guy. You got to come in, and it's not, hey, we're going to be, we're okay with being middle of the pack in the Big 12. Like, no, we are coming in and we are winning this thing. I am not against him saying that in any way, shape, or form. I am not. But if I had to pick, I would take Matt Campbell. Let me know if you would as well down below, or at Nick_Marv on Twitter. You made it this far. Shout out to you. Be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone State, completely free. Helps me and you, actually, because you get to see these every single day. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.